It has happened. Microsoft has been sued over the end of life for Windows 10. We're going to have a look at the lawsuit today and talk about what has merit, what does not have merit, and maybe speculate on what may or may not happen here. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. Thanks for checking out this video by Switched to Linux. Welcome back to Windows Wednesday, where we talk about all the reasons we've ditched Windows to move to Linux. If you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel, leave us a like and a comment down below. And we are going to be having a look at this, and I like the Tech Radar right up here where he talked about 5 reasons why the lawsuit could actually cause some change. And this is, of course, interesting. Now, ultimately, is Microsoft going to change everything? I don't know. The reality is, the way this lawsuit is done, it's going to need to be handled very soon. And if they're doing a temporary injunction, it could tie up the Microsoft ending Windows 10 support for the period of litigation, which is interesting. So is there merit to that actually happening? That really is the case here. So, of course, from this article here, the plaintiff here, who is Klein, he accused Microsoft of violating consumer legal code and business code, including false advertising law, by winding up support for Windows 10 too early. Now, part of this is leaning on some of the same laws that Louis Rossmann recently tested and found to be toothless. So, that is certainly something to keep in mind. That being said, there are some valid points, and there were actually, after reading the whole suit, I actually kind of agree with him in a couple places that I formerly had disagreed in just by reading the articles. But here, let's look at his basic arguments here. The crux of the argument is that too many people remain on Windows 10 for the operating system to have its support pulled, creating a potential e-waste nightmare. Now, it's the public pressure from over e-waste that might be the part that causes the biggest concern here, that might cause some form of change. He also argues that the upgrade timeline is all part of Microsoft's drive to push people to use its Copilot AI with Windows 11 and a broader push to get more adoption to Copilot Plus PCs. This is the one that, after reading through the suit, I kind of understand it more. My initial thought is, yeah, I don't know if that's specifically the case, because they did push a lot of that AI, backported it to Windows 10. So even on Windows 10, you can use it. But I do like the argument he made, and it is an interesting, compelling argument we'll have a look at. He argues that Microsoft should postpone killing off of Windows 10 until far fewer people are using the operating system. That's an interesting, valid point. Now, looking at the specific points here, the article here at Tech Radar had some really valid points. The first is the Windows 11 system requirements are really high. Let's actually jump on into the suit here real quick. So this is Lawrence Klein is a San Diego resident, or at least San Diego County resident, and he argues that Microsoft has done. They've released the end of support too soon, and this ignites the controversy of, what about that time they said it's the last Windows? And so let's go ahead and dive into that one first. He says less than a year ago, Microsoft announced it would cease providing support for Windows 10 devices in October of 2025. So less than a year ago from when? From the point of the lawsuit. I actually think that is true. Let's see if we can find the exact date when the lawsuit was pushed. Usually that's stamped on it, and this copy of it does not have the stamp. So, okay, so 6/26. So is it true? That is not true by a margin of just about a month. So looking at the official Windows page, this is the official end of support page from Microsoft, end of support for Windows 10, 8.1, and Windows 7. So here's the Windows 10, there's a Windows 8.1 and a Windows 7 tab. So this one here supports it. This is what's currently live. So I go back onto the Internet Archive. The very first snapshot of the page is a page not found. So why is a page not found snapshotted? I don't know. Maybe people were really looking for that page and trying to index it far earlier, but for whatever reason, it is not there. The first instance of the page is June 23rd, 2022, and this page lists only Windows 8.1 and Windows 7. So it would appear that the last page that listed just Windows 8.1 and 8.7 is March 26th of 2024, and the first snapshot we find in the Internet Archive that contains Windows 10 as well is April of 2024. So if the suit was filed in June of 2025, now, if this thing was sitting on the lawyer's desk for 2 or 3 months, yes, it would be less than a year from that time it was written. But from the time it was filed, it has been 14 months since Windows officially announced the end of Windows 10. So that part there is, depending on what you're considering, less than a year. Less than a year from the time the suit made its way into the court. That is not true by 2 months. But yes, if they were working on this for a few months, then at the time they wrote this, that may very well be true. So the end of support was officially made on Microsoft's website in April of 2024, 2024, the very beginning of the month. End of March, same year, it was not there. So over here, what he writes is that neither Microsoft or the original equipment OEMs disclosed the potential additional costs or consequences of the decision and support. And so part of what he's arguing is, what if you bought a computer at that time? Well, I think if you bought a computer in that time, you would not have been able to find a Windows 10 anyway. That's one of the issues with the suit here, is that they stopped releasing Windows 10. I forget exactly when. It is actually in the Wikipedia article I'm going to have a look at here. So the general availability started then, latest release. Okay, it doesn't tell us exactly when we could have bought it. It might be embedded down here. But I want to say it was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you could no longer pick up a copy of Windows 10 by default in a store. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was about 3 or so years ago. Now that's actually going to make its way in, because the duration of time, which is listed in the lawsuit when they ended support for other operating systems, is twice what it was for Windows 10. Which is interesting. They say Microsoft's decision to discontinue support for Windows 10 while most of the consumer base is still using it as part of the company's larger strategy to force customers to purchase new devices. Now, what he's mentioning here is, like this article mentions here with the end-of-life statistics, in July of 2025 was the first time that it dipped under 50%. Now, at the time the suit was made, the Windows market share for Windows 10 was still over 50%. I think it was 53%. So April 2025, 53% remained on it. And in July, it was 43%. Now, what was interesting here, as the suit makes note of, is that when Windows 7 support ended, it still had a 25% market share, meaning it had a significant less market share than Windows 10 has at the same point of time. And that's when the announcement was made, not when the actual end of support was made. And I think that is proving itself an interesting case. So is the push to get into this? My initial thought is no, because they started pushing this beforehand, but not really. It turns out that the official announcement of the end of Windows 10 happened after the AI revolution, and he's going to get later on into this into the suit here that the entire push is to push not just AI in general, which Windows 10 supports, and that's why my counter argument was, I don't know if this one holds water, but the way he frames it in the suit it does hold a lot of water, because what they're basically doing is forcing a much better and much more integrated AI system rather than Windows 10 AI applications added on top of the system that you could uninstall, whereas Windows 11, they are embedded deeply in the system, forcing you to use their AI instead of looking at potential alternative AIs, meaning we are approaching the realm of antitrust and utilizing your dominant market share of your operating system in order to do such a thing. So sadly, this tactic in Microsoft's attempt to monopolize the generative AI market is wide-reaching consequences. Likely millions of users will not buy new devices or pay for extended support. These users, some of whom are businesses storing sensitive consumer data, will be at heightened risk of cybersecurity attack or other data security incidents, a reality of which Microsoft is well aware. So he's saying that a lot of people, and this is precedent, a lot of people keep using their operating system. Hey, I still kept using Windows 7 way after the support. I was more intelligent with it, and I didn't use the computer a lot because by then I had made a full transition to Linux, using the Windows computer as I needed. I think I kept using it for accounting stuff for a couple more years. But the reality is most people aren't going to make any changes because the computer will still continue to work. And what his argument is, a lot more people are going to have their computers open to cyber attacks, including businesses with sensitive consumer information. He even makes reference in here that a high percentage of medical people are still using Windows 10, not Windows 11. So he says, to remedy the state of affairs, plaintiff seeks injunctive relief requiring Microsoft to continue providing support for Windows 10 without additional fees or conditions until the number of devices running the operating system falls below a reasonable threshold, thereby ensuring that consumers and businesses are not unfairly pressured into unnecessary expenditures and cybersecurity risks, and requiring Microsoft to provide clear disclosures to consumers purchasing a Windows OS license. Now, that's something that he mentions down here. Here is some of the push for the AI. But over here, Microsoft has already made a concession, true, but it's not enough. This is the part where he talks about the extra cost. Now, he does say that he points out the transitional support and lawsuit, meaning the length of support after the succeeding OS has been launched, 4 years in this case, which isn't entirely fair and looks lean. The challenge is that the author of this article from TechRadar, I don't think read as closely through the suit, because if you get down here, let me just scan down to it and then we'll kind of move our way back up. Over here, what we see is that Windows XP support ended in 2014, 7 years after Vista launched. So 7 years after the preceding. Vista support ended 8 years after its successor launched. Windows 7 support ended 8 years after its successor launched. Windows 8 supported ended 8 years after Windows 10 launched. However, Windows 10 is discontinued only 4 years after Windows 11 launched, 50% of the typical time. That is a significant number that the TechRadar article did not seem to recognize. And so let me go back up to where we were so that we can get back on track. But I did want to mention here, he ignores the concession Microsoft has said, and I don't think he does ignore it, because he says without fees or conditions. What are the concessions? Well, you can avoid paying the $30 for 1 year support. You just have to sync up your computer and your OneDrive. Now, this guy, because he's a Microsoft simp here, says, you won't pay a penny, but you do need to sync some PC settings to OneDrive. And I don't think that requirement is too onerous myself. Well, of course, you're a Microsoft simp. Okay. What if I do not want my files in Microsoft servers? What if I see my files as my files, not your files? Therefore, keep your dirty, grubby Microsofty hands off of my files. What, you just want me to pay extra money, even though my computer works perfectly fine if it wasn't for you doing planned obsolescence? And I think that his suit does make use of it, although he doesn't specifically mention that there is a way to get it for free, but he does list in his suit without monetary or other conditions. And so I think that that one there is another valid point. Now, here is again where he says remains widely used, estimates indicating as of April, 52.94% of desktop Windows users still relied on Windows 10. And again, Windows 7 was down to, I think, 25% before they announced the end of support. Now, if Microsoft maintained Windows 10 for 4 more years, like they did precedent on the other ones, yes, that support would have dropped down because computers after 4 more years are going to stop working. This clearly is Microsoft prematurely ending it. All right. So although Microsoft is encouraging consumers to upgrade to Windows 11, many devices currently running Windows 10 lack hardware requirements to make the transition, such a transition, such as the Intel 8th generation or Zen 2 CPUs, TPM 2.0, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage. This is a departure from the hardware requirements for previous versions of Windows. Whereas he does make mention here that if you were on an older version of Windows, usually you could upgrade without a problem. I think the only major change would have been going from an XP to a Vista. It would be a whole lot harder to change. But again, they had 8 years of that transition time, 8 years of support. So as long as your Windows Vista or your Windows XP computer kept on chugging along, you would not be forced to upgrade. And so what he's arguing is that if, hey, Microsoft supported Windows 10 for 4 more years, like they have done on all previous operating systems, then the user base would drop, which is an especially important thing because computers nowadays will last a lot longer than they did way back then. Which is interesting. So Microsoft is cutting off support way too prematurely because you look at what a computer in the Vista time, and then you look at a computer 8 years later, it was significant, like infinitely better 8 years later back then. But a computer now versus a computer from 8 years ago is not nearly as different. We've pretty much peaked out the processor speed. Yes, you can get a few more cores, but there's not a whole lot more. The RAM hasn't moved up significantly amounts more. The average computer RAM, like when I got my very first computer, I had, and this was back in the late 90s, that thing had so much RAM, it was making my friends envious. I had 32 megabytes of RAM. When I got my next computer, which was my first XP computer, I don't remember how much RAM it had. It wasn't a lot. And then it was from that computer to the next one, only like 5 years later, we were into the 1 gig RAM at that point in time. And then just a couple years later, we're into the 4. And now you can get the computers up there as much as, a typical computer in the store now might be like 8 for the low end up to 16. But that is a significant smaller jump than what we used to have long ago. So a computer over 8 years span would have been a significantly better computer than what we have now. And that's one of his arguments, I think, that's a good one, that if they're cutting off this support after only 4 years rather than 8 years, you are causing too much premature e-waste. So over here, they're saying in a bid to induce customers to upgrade their devices, they actively blocked PCs from before 2017 from receiving the updates, forcing users to buy new laptops if they want the newest Microsoft. They've actively sought to prevent workarounds to move ineligible hardware to Windows 11, which is true. They have been actively moving around it. Maybe just allow people to upgrade to Windows 11, and if it doesn't have TPM 2.0 support, that's fine. So what? Eventually that computer will die. Eventually, somebody's going to have to replace it. But why force people to replace it now if it's not working? Is at this writing, close to half of Windows users are still using Windows 10. This number includes enterprise users, the whole customer data. 41% of endpoints in healthcare are running Windows 11. 19% will need to be replaced entirely. So its announcement about the end of support for Windows 10 does not inform customers about options other than discarding Windows 10 devices. Let's have a look at that. So this is the actual page, and support for Windows 10 will end. Will no longer provide free software updates for Windows Update, technical assistance, or security fixes. Your PC will still work, but we recommend moving to Windows 11. Windows 11 offers a modern, efficient experience designed to meet current demands for heightened security. So here's, your various features that it does. Learn why it's right for you. Compare the two. New era of security. Blah, blah, blah. How to shop for a laptop. They don't give you any other options. Hey, here's a buy one. Ready for a new PC? Buy one. Buy stuff. Buy stuff. Trade in or recycle your old PC. Nothing here except buying a new computer. So on that, the suit is right. They say Windows 11 includes Microsoft's new generative AI. This is something that's going to hurt them in their suit because it's not generative AI. It's large language models. There's a difference. Generative AI is what everybody's trying to push to right now. Now, I think they're confusing it because LLM generates stuff. I think that's where they're getting it. But generative AI is a different thing than LLMs, is a different thing than agentic AI. So I think that will be overlooked. But in this case here, they're saying that Windows 11 includes the new AI software like Copilot. They did backport Copilot to Windows 10, however, but it's not as deeply integrated. Microsoft has developed Copilot Plus PCs, new category of AI-powered PCs, by forcing users to upgrade Windows 11 and especially purchase AI-powered devices. They're ensuring a built-in market for the new software, thereby gaining an edge over competitors. This is how they won me to their argument on this, because they are forcing you to use their AI system instead of relying or looking on an AI system if you are so inclined to use it. They're explicit about the objective, often calling 2025 the year of the Windows 11 PC refresh, to get consumers to ditch their older but perfectly function Windows 10 devices to purchase Copilot Plus capable PCs running Microsoft's AI systems. This is the historical phase out we just looked at. Windows 10 is being discontinued 4 years after Windows 11 launched, even though over 50% of Windows users still rely on it. They typically had longer transition periods, which we've already covered: 7 years, 8 years, 8 years, 8 years. And they said they would announce it would end the support for an operating system. The number of active users declined to a small overall percentage. All right. So what they're arguing there is that the end of life announcements were not made until they were under 25% usage, which was amazing because even Windows 7, people wanted to hold on to as long as they could. They just couldn't keep using it because of hardware failures and things like that, maybe other software requirements. Now, people were then forced to Windows 10, which I guess it was 50-50. Some people really liked it. Some people didn't. What about Windows 11? He does make a case in here that people really don't like Windows 11. I didn't read his source on that. I think that's more subjective, but yeah, I do see a lot more complaints about Windows 11 than I've seen at Windows 10. Previous OS upgrades did not require users to upgrade their hardware. Most devices that ran Windows 7 and 8 could simply upgrade to 10. That is true in the Windows 7 or Windows 8 era. That was not as true in the XP to Vista. That was, in fact, why Vista was such a horrible launch, is that the hardware requirements were so high for Vista compared to the average computer available on the market at that time. So when I bought my first computers, I was forced to buy it with Vista instead of XP. It did not even, the computer they actually sold me from the OEM did not even have the minimum requirements for running Vista. And so you could not have upgraded an XP to Vista, although who in their right mind would want to? All right. So Windows 11 is wildly unpopular, and absent the forced obsolescence, many Windows users would not upgrade to Windows 11. I generally agree with the sentiment, but I think it is subjective. I'm not sure. Again, he does have a reference there. I did not look at that reference. Windows 11 does not present many enticing features that warrant an upgrade. And consumers do not find the new interface appealing. Microsoft has been unwilling to take consumer preferences into account when designing or updating it because the dominant firm in the OS market does not have to. So other than the subjectiveness of the popularity, I generally agree with that. I see a lot of people that do not want Windows 11. The sluggish demand for Windows 11 represents a unique challenge to Microsoft in the race to corner the AI market. Without forced obsolescence of Windows 10, many users would simply not use Microsoft's native AI software. Because on 10, while they do install it, you can also uninstall most of it. Microsoft did not announce firm end of support until the end of 2024. That is not true. Of course, March 2024 was not there. They did officially do it at the beginning, April, I guess, second quarter 2024. So that's not entirely true. They're gonna lose on that one there. because it was early in 2024, not late. So this is, of course, the potential of data breaches and identity theft. So over here, there are incentives for ending this customer support and the cost, recognizing many individuals and businesses may be unable to transition to the devices. They've announced they will offer extended support for $30 for individuals, $61 per device for businesses for the first year, increasing, of course. They have put individuals in business in the position of choosing whether to spend more money on new devices or spend additional sum propping up their obsolete devices. And that's, I think, the thing, because if these computers are not malfunctioning, there's no reason why Microsoft should force them to end it. They say by phasing out Windows 10 prematurely, Microsoft incentivizes consumers and businesses to purchase new devices, either directly from Microsoft or through the OEM partners. And then, of course, he's talking about the vendor lock-in with OpenAI, workloads through Azure's Microsoft system rather than their competitors, and giving them an AI for that. So, let's see, I'll skip that one there. Embedding Copilot in Windows, Microsoft ensures millions of users encounter its AI by default, reducing friction and adoption compared to other third-party AI tools that require separate downloads or subscriptions. And so that's the antitrust argument here. All this puts Microsoft at a competitive advantage in the AI market against competitors without a captive audience. Microsoft is abusing its near monopoly and operating in the operating system market to force consumers to purchase new devices. This is a point where I think is valid. You know, I should have the option to, on maybe initial setup, I want absolutely no AI in my system, period. No AI at all. And then I should have that honored. Here they talk about the full page overlay ads into it. They talk here about the OEMs are now pushing this issue, trying to get people into it. Of course, he does have a mention about a lot about the Copilot Plus PCs. Not every Windows 11 computer is Copilot Plus. So that's, I don't think, carries a lot of weight in this one. Defendant violated the unfair prong of the UCL by, among other things, prematurely ending support for Windows 10 despite continued widespread use, therefore rendering many older but still functioning devices obsolete, requiring many consumers to incur the cost of purchasing a new device, which benefits Microsoft. Worse, they recognize many users will be unable to upgrade before the end of support date and plans on continuing security patches, but only users who pay a fee where it could simply continue providing update to all affected users. That's a valid point here, because if they are already creating these security patches and they're just paywalling the security patches, why in the world does it not make sense for them to say, we are already pushing out these patches anyway? Why does a person have to pay for a patch that's already created for an operating system that still functions? Hey, Microsoft, the computer will die eventually. Is that not enough for you? But no, it's not. And that's the key point here that they should lose on. Like, they've created the patches. They're just not giving it to them until they have money. For a system they said will be the last Windows. We are going to get to that point because there's a lot of misconception about that, and we'll go ahead and get into that. Microsoft's conduct is deceptive as consumers purchase and rely on Microsoft software, expecting sustained support and functionality, only to discover planned obsolescence undermines reliability and longevity. And, they have indisputable market power for the operating systems and is leveraging power to force consumers to retire old but still functional devices in order to acquire new devices capable of running Microsoft's native AI software and obtain a competitive edge over the AI sector. And so I think the most of the rest of this is what they're calling for. They're basically calling for an injunction against Microsoft, forcing them to support it for a few more years. And he calls for what his call is going to be for is until the actual number of users gets below 10%. And I agree with I think it was this one here. It might be a different article. I think that if you wait until it's under 10%, I think that's too low. But let's keep the support going for 8 years or until 25% market share. And then you can do a 1-year rollout for ending it. That would be a lot better. And so effectively, they're just calling for Microsoft to continue to support the computers. So let's go ahead and have a look at our comments down here, because there's the one point I wanted to cover. They never advertised as such, basically talking about, I thought this was going to be the last Windows, right? They never advertised it. You can't find an example because it didn't happen. During these keynote releases of Windows 10, one of the presenters said the last version was offhand throwaway remark. Oh, no one ever said it. Really? The Verge reported it in 2015. And then they asked Microsoft, what did he mean? And they didn't deny it. So these guys running around, where did this nonsense come from? This nonsense came from the simps at PC World. Because PC World, coming to run to the defense of Windows, writes effectively, as you read through this, is an opinion piece. Basically, he is the guy. This is the guy that started this nonsense that says this never happened in an article in 2021. And I know some of these younger guys that are now in their 20s don't remember things when they were 10 years old going on in the market, but I'm an older dude with a graying beard, and I was working in the computer sector when Windows 10 came out, and I remember articles after articles after articles, statements after statements after statements, Windows 10 will be the last Windows. It was all over. Now, many of those articles have come down. It's harder to find some of those references. But what we see here is from The Verge. Now, yes, that statement was made in the middle of a speech. Now, the PC World guy says that this wasn't something, this was a random employee saying something, not speaking on behalf of Microsoft. That's his argument. They say, right now we're releasing Windows 10 because Windows 10 is the last version of Windows. We're still working on Windows 10. In the background, so they said in the background, it was always developing Windows 10. This is during the launch of 8.1. After 8 was an abysmal failure, 8.1 comes out, but they were in the background. They were developing this. Now he says it's all just Windows 10. Well, immediately sounds like Microsoft is killing off Windows and not doing future versions. The reality is a little more complex. The future is Windows as a service. And that's why we covered a lot of articles on this channel about Windows as a service. So what they're doing here, the company hasn't really explained exactly how that will play out. That might be because there won't really be any future major versions of Windows in the foreseeable future. Microsoft has altered the way its engineers and delivers engineers and delivers Windows, and the initial result is Windows 10. Instead of big releases, there will be regular improvements and updates. Part of this is achieved by splitting the operating system into components like Start Menu, built-in apps, to be separate parts that can be updated independently to the entire Windows core operating system. It's a big undertaking, but something Microsoft has been actively working on for Windows 10 to ensure it spans across multiple devices. Okay, so when I reached out to Microsoft about Nixon's comment, the company did not dismiss them at all. So the company didn't say, oh, no, that's not true. This is what they said. Recent comments at Ignite about Windows 10 are reflective of the way Windows will be delivered as a service, bringing new innovations and updates in an ongoing manner with a continuous value on our consumer and our business customers. That is Windows affirming this will be the last Windows. They said, we are not speaking to future branding at this time, but customers can be confident Windows 10 will remain up to date and power a variety of devices from PCs to phones. Yeah, that didn't work. Surface Hub, HoloLens. I don't think those worked. Xbox. Hey, we got one. Okay. We look forward to a long future of Windows innovations. They're not denying it and literally saying Windows 10 will remain up to date on a variety of devices. With Windows 10, it's time to start thinking of Windows as something that won't see a big launch or a major upgrade every few years anymore. This is really the idea of Windows as a service. The notion that Windows 10 could be the last major version of Windows. Microsoft could opt for a Windows 11 or 12 in the future. But if people upgrade to Windows 10 and the regular updates do the trick, then everyone will just settle for just Windows without even worrying about the version number. So these people down here running this nonsense around is basing it on this 2021 opinion article, not what was actually going on in 2015 when Windows 10 was rolling out. So what did the Windows say at the time? Because I did see, I think it was in another one, I did see a comment. There was another article I was going to include, and I should have included it just for the comments. But somebody said, oh no, they announced it back when it was released, it would have a 10-year lifespan, which is utter balderdash. That did not happen. In fact, even over here in the Wikipedia article, down here, 2021, they announced Windows 10 would essentially would be succeeded on a compatible hardware by Windows 11. Okay, so it wasn't until 2021 that they started talking about Windows 11. 2021. Making a departure from what had been dubbed Windows as a Service. PC World is the only one that argued that the widely reported comment was taken out of context, noting the official transcript marks it only as a segue rather than a core part of the talk. It argues that Nixon was referring to the fact that he could talk freely at the event because 10 was the last version in current development. So PC World writes a piece which, as you read it, is very much like an opinion piece defending Windows, making a Windows 11 now after for years being silent on saying Windows 10 was the last version. So that's where all this nonsense came from. But it wasn't until April of 2024 that they officially announced the end of Windows 25, which, by the way, is only 4 years after the release of the next Windows, not 8 had been done previously. And so looking at everything here, what is the validity of this lawsuit? Well, I'm not sure it's going to cause a lot of change, but it could cause a class action in the state of California and other states that have similar consumer rights laws. Will it cause Microsoft to change? Probably not, but we'll see what happens. Since it's being asked for a temporary injunction, they could cause Microsoft to continue to offer free support. But the challenge is that this is a lawsuit based on laws relevant to one state, which Microsoft might look at and go, maybe we'll just let that one state have 1 year of free support too. That's possibly what they could do, because they're not bound by those laws anywhere else in the world. And if it is true and the lawsuit says that they're just doing this to gain a better competitive edge on AI, well, it would make a whole lot more sense to provide a little bit of free support for one state in the United States than to delay a plan to the whole world. So I think on the end goal, this is going to fail at the entire goal of causing Windows 10 to still be supported for another several years, but we'll see what happens. All that being said, does this affect me? Not a lot. I've been telling people since Windows 10 came out to switch to Linux because Windows 10 sucks and Windows 11 sucks worse. All right. So that is kind of the point here. It is an interesting lawsuit. I like what they're doing. They point out some really good things. They point out some things that are correct. There's a few things that I think are a little bit of mistakes. I hope that this suit goes somewhere. I hope it causes at least a little bit more outrage, but we'll kind of see what happens in the long run. There's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below. And if you need a Linux distribution to jump to, I highly recommend looking at Linux Mint. I will leave you with a comprehensive review at the end of this video, so you can click on that video and see what that would look like. Leave us a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.